I'm just going to remove the motor. In the field, you may be able to slide it out of the way if this is not something you can do in the field. It might be easier just to get it slid out of the way, just so you can get that coupler out. Somehow you're going to want to turn it. Drop it back down. So now I can remove the coupler. And I have access to this bearing, to the coupling here, and the bearing, and this coupling here. Depending on the size of puller you have, you may not be able to get it into this spot here. You might need to remove the motor completely out of the way. So in this case, the bearing puller that I do have here is too large to fit in this area, so I'm going to remove the motor completely. Before I do that, I'm going to want to loosen this off, this coupler off, and take it right off. Okay, so this one is a new setup here, so it's going to come apart fairly easy. On a pump that is in the field that's been running for X amount of time, you're probably going to want to use some lubricating oil on these before you attempt to take them off, and you may need to apply heat to get it out as well, using a propane torch. Just to simulate that with the propane torch, I'll show you. Got heat. Just going to heat this up right around the Allen screw here. Take them right off, save it, because you're going to reuse this coupler if the coupler is still intact. We'll do the same thing on this side. Okay. Now if I can, I'll push the key stock out. Chances are you won't be able to. It'll be bind it up in there. You'll see where the set screw was embedded. I'm going to want to file that down before reinstallation. So to get this guy off, I'm going to want to spray a whole bunch of lubricant in here. Got my bearing puller. Once again, in the field, you're probably going to need to apply heat in this situation. I'm just going to go right around here. I'm going to heat up the entire coupler on this section here. Obviously in the field you're going to be doing that a lot longer. This one's brand new, so it's going to come apart a lot easier. Now she's off. I'm going to rest that to the side with the key stock and the 2 set screws. Over here, you'll see the indentation where the other set screw was in the shaft. Once again, you're going to want to file that down, just as we need to do with the key stock before reinstallation. When you do remove the motor, try to keep the shims together where they came from. They may work out the same way, they might not. But we'll figure that out upon reinstallation. Okay, if you take a quick look here, you'll notice there's no divot in this shaft. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 1/2-inch drill bit and just put a little bit of a divot, so when our bearing puller goes on, the bolt for the bearing puller has somewhere to sit, so it's not flying all over the place. I'm going to use my automatic center punch just to find the middle here. Depending on the bearing puller, you might need to make a bigger divot. Same procedure as pulling the coupler off the motor. You want to add lubricant by the set screws and then heat to get it off. At this point, as I said before, you're going to want to add heat here to pull this thing off. This one's brand new, so we're not going to worry about it. Okay, same markings on the key stock as on the other one. And you're going to find the same markings on the shaft right over there. Once again, we're going to have to file those down before we reinstall. So now we're going to pull off the bearing here. Very similar process, but before we do anything, we're going to have to file that down. So we're going to have to file down the burr here. Got 2 set screws here that are sitting on the flat spots of the shaft here. So we're going to do a similar process. We're going to put some lubricant on these and then heat up this section of the bearing to pull these set screws out. Same thing over here, right here and there. Okay. The bearing set screws are either a 532 or a 4 mil Allen. I'm going to put the Allen screws out of the way. At this point, I could, if this was in the field, I would spray more lubricant down these holes and right inside there. Chances are this shaft will be stuck when you do go to do this kind of operation here. The internals are probably jammed up inside and this shaft won't move, so you have to go wherever it is to get to it. Now using a 15/16 deep drive socket and an impact wrench, I can pull off the 4 nuts that are holding the bearing on. So I just repositioned my bearing puller from a 3-arm to a 2-arm. Okay, so I got the 2 teeth there. Now once again, this one's going to come off easy. It's not going to be the same way in the field. You're going to want to, in the field, you're going to definitely want to put a lot of heat on the bearing collar here. And then with the impact gun, you'll be able to pull this off. The bearing's off. You'll have these 4 spacers here that you're gonna have to get off as well. A pair of channel locks in there. Give it a twist. Sometimes they're a little tight. You may have to put some sort of a screwdriver or whatnot right in the back there between the spacer and this plate, the felt retaining plate, and just tap it to get it to loosen out. Once again, lubricant. Probably want to apply lubricant right around here if it's stuck. Okay, then you got this plate here. Sometimes this one's on there pretty tight. So you got 2 of these. It'll work for this, but it'll also help you with the bearing sometimes. Okay, get in behind there like this and pry them out. Might need to lift the shaft a little bit, wiggle it. Once that's off, then you can pull the felt out, change it, put the new felt on. If the bracket's not damaged, the felt retainer is not damaged, you can put that back on or replace with a brand new one. You're gonna wanna lift the shaft a bit. Make sure that felt is where it's supposed to be in the felt retainer. You get your spacers. If it's giving you trouble, you can do one of two things. You can either take a piece of sandpaper, sand down the shoulder of the bolt a little bit, or you can take a 3/4 socket and a hammer, just give it a little tap. Now it's all the way on. You're going to want to file down that spot there. If we haven't, you're going to want to clean this up. Sand down the whole shaft if we're reusing the shaft. And you're going to want to make sure the new bearing will slide on easy. So this one's sticking. I don't want it to stick, so I need to sand this shaft down. Maybe even sand inside the bearing a little bit. I want it to go on nice and easy, no resistance. I'm just going to take a piece of sandpaper here, wrap it around the shaft. For a unit that's been in the field, when you think you've sanded enough, sand some more. There. Now it goes on real easy. That's what I'm looking for. No resistance. At that point, I can clean it up. If you have brake clean's perfect for this situation. You're going to want to clean the inside of the bearing as well with brake clean. It's all cleaned up. Now I'm going to put my focus on the key stock that we took out earlier. So I'm going to want to make sure that key stock slides in here real easy. I don't want any resistance as well. Now I'm going to remove that spot there with a file. I'll just put the file down on a flat surface, and I'm just going to work this back and forth a little bit. So I can't really feel that raised section anymore. I'm going to get my high temp anti-seize. Right now the shaft is able to move back and forth because the other side is the free side. So I'm going to pull the shaft all the way out towards me here. And I'm going to get anti-seize on the shaft. I don't really want any on this flat surface. It's not necessary. The bearing doesn't make any contact with that flat surface anyway. I'm also going to apply anti-seize to the inside of the bearing. Okay, now I'm going to go install the bearing on the shaft here. I want to make sure on the motor side that my grease nipple's pointed straight up. I want to make sure my shaft, if I can rotate the shaft, the two flat sections are towards the left and the right on the upper section. And I'm going to turn this inner section of the bearing so the two set screws line up with those two flat spots. Okay. Once again, at this point, you're probably going to need to lift a little bit to get the bearing started. Once I got it started on the 4 bolts here, I can take my old coupler and use it to assist in putting the bearing back on. I can also use a block of wood on the sides here, as well as there. So I'm going to just put the corner of the wood right there. Just tap the wood. Same thing over here. Once I've got the studs exposed, I can actually use the nuts to help pull it back in. So install the 4 lock washers. The 4 nuts. Take my 15-16 deep drive socket with my impact gun, and just like you would tighten up your wheels, you're going to alternate. Once the bearing's sitting flat against the spacers, then I can give it some torque. So your bearing's installed now. Okay, so a couple things here. Before we start this, obviously we want to spray oil on all these spots that we're going to be taking apart. In here as well, the set screw. 532 of the 4mm and a 1/2 inch wrench. So the 1/2 inch wrench will loosen the jam nut here, and you'll be able to pull that set screw out. Chances are you won't be able to get this brass sliding key out, but because this one's new, I'm able to get it out. You get my 15-16 deep drive socket and the impact driver. Okay, same like in the front, there's no divot here, so I'm gonna have to get that drill. Automatic center punch. Half-inch drill bit. My bearing puller is already set up in the 2-arm formation. So this arm I'm gonna just put to the side, either one side or the other, of this bolt here that holds the bearing cover on. And I'm gonna go to the opposite side with this bottom arm. So you see there, got one on one side, one on the other side. You can do it the other way too. In the field, you're probably going to want to spray a whole bunch of lubricant inside here, and you're going to want to use heat around here to pull this off. Because this one's brand new, it should probably come off fairly easy. This is where those 2 bars come in handy here. You can get them right on the corner here, right on the corner there, and just simply applying pressure like that, the bearing pulls out fairly easy. Okay. Same thing, I'm going to want to pull these off. I'm going to want to get this felt and felt retainer off as well. Apply a little pressure up on the shaft. Pops off. So at this point then I would inspect the retainer, make sure it's not damaged. If it is, replace it, replace the felt seal. I'm going to want to pull this shaft towards me now. And sand it down if it needs to. Same thing, I want to check the bearing, make sure it slides on nice and easy. Just like that. At this point I can install the new felt and the new felt retainer. Put on the spacers. Clean the shaft. Clean the bearing. High temp anti-seize. Make sure that shaft is pulled towards me. I'm going to apply anti-seize on the whole shaft here. Want to make sure that this brass is going to slide in easy. Not too loose, not too tight, but it's got to be able to slide. Now I'm going to apply some anti-seize in here, where the keys in the keyway, and on the bearing, just like before. Now on this one, on the free side bearing, I want to point my grease nipple away from the inlet pipe. So I got it on there, similar process. Use my old sleeve coupler, block of wood. Reinstall 4 lock washers and the 4 nuts. (15/16) deep drive socket with the impact wrench. Okay, at this point now, we're going to want to set the spacing, right? Before we do that, we'll spin this opening here so it's above where above the keyway here. And we'll leave the other one over here on this side towards the grease nipple. And we'll leave it open. We'll make our way to the back here again by the motor side. We're going to make sure we've got the flat spot here set with our Allen key on that side and the flat spot set on this side as well. Okay. Make sure it slides forward and backward easily without any resistance. And then I'm going to turn this one up slightly. Got my 2 set screws for the bearing here. I'm just going to start them. Once again, turning, making sure this one's straight up in the air. We'll come back to this side here now. Now you're going to take some measurements for your spacing. We have this device here, works really good in this situation. So the first measurement I want to take is going to be the shaft all the way out towards me this side. And I'm going to take that measurement from the shaft to the collar here of the bearing. In this situation, the shaft is sticking out. Sometimes the shaft will be in. In this case, it won't be. Both of our measurements will be out. So our first measurement all the way out is going to be 0.454 inches, and I'm going to write that down. Second measurement I'm going to take is pushing the shaft all the way in. In this case, it's sticking out as well. .040. So because both of these measurements are have the shaft sticking out, we're going to subtract the two of them, one from the other, the smaller one from the larger number. So we're going to end up with 0.414, and then we're going to take that number and divide by 2. 0.207. So what we're looking for here is larger than 0.125. If we're less than 125, there's a chance that we could end up having stuff rub inside. So since we're at 0.207, we're good. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our first number, which was the shaft all the way out, 0.454, and we're going to subtract 0.125. We end up with 0.329. That's going to be our setting for where we set the shaft. Sometimes this number could be a negative. That just means that the shaft won't be sticking out past the bearing collar. It'll be pushed in. In this case, we're going to be having it pushed out. Once I've got that number, some Loctite, head around this side. I'm going to apply Loctite to the Allen screw that was right on the top there. Right now I'm spinning it backwards. Now I'm going to spin it forwards. Making sure that this is in the middle, or if this is a rebuild and we're reusing the shaft, you want to avoid whatever indentation was made by the previous install. Once I've got that hand tight there, I'm going to give it just a little bit. And I'll just rotate the shaft to get to the other one. Once again, apply some Loctite. Rotating it backwards and then forwards. Wiping off the excess. Now I'm going to tighten this to torque specification. And then back to the other one. Okay. And we're just going to double check, make sure we got the right, that it didn't move too much on us, or hopefully it didn't move at all. So it moved just a little bit, but it's still okay. gonna set that in the upward position there. Back some more anti-seize. I'm gonna get my brass here. So depending on how the shaft is in relation to the bearing here will dictate which way the brass goes in. In this case, I'm going to be putting the brass in this way where the divot for the set screw lines up on that side. If the shaft is inside, past the lip or the edge of the bearing, then you're going to want to rotate the brass that way so that it lines up like this. So now I've got that. I'm going to apply anti-seize to the brass piece, trying not to get any into where the set screw is going to go. So I've got that. I'm going to slide that in, trying to line up the divot with the center of the hole. I can use the Allen key here to help adjust that. And I'm going to take my screw here, my jam nut. I want to make sure I get that point right where it's supposed to go. There we go. So now that I've got that there, get a 1/2 inch wrench. And just a regular Allen key here. What I want to do is I want to torque this a bit and then back it off. What I'm looking for here is any play in the brass there. I want a little bit of play, but not too much play. I don't want it too tight. If it's too tight, it's going to destroy the bearing. And you can see that by the movement in the anti-seize. You can actually see the anti-seize moving while you do this. You can see it there. So that I want it snug, but not super tight at all. Once I got that sweet spot, I'm going to get this Allen key here. And I want to maintain that position. So I've got it there. I want to try to maintain that position there as I tighten the jam nut. And then I'm going to double check it. I still have a little bit of play. You can actually see, the anti-seize moving a little bit as I move back and forth here. So that's good. Now at this point, I'm just going to wipe down this section. This side here is done. You could reinstall the bearing cover on this side, and that would be it. Got that key stock here that's cleaned up. We're going to test fit this coupler here. Notice I've got the set screws almost all the way out. That's so I can apply anti-seize, or sorry, not anti-seize, Loctite on this before I lock it in place. But right now I just want to make sure that this guy slides on the shaft first by itself, just like the bearing did earlier. If it doesn't, then we'll have to sand down something or other. So it's a little stiff. So get the sandpaper. I'm just going to sand down inside here a little bit. Much better. No resistance. Okay, so now I've got that. I want to try it with the key stock as well. So now I've got the same point there. So if this is a rebuild, I probably want to flip this around so that's down at the bottom, because sometimes when you go to tighten on an existing point, it'll shift something on you and change your measurement. So what I'll do is I'll flip that around to the other side. Make sure this key stock goes in. And I want to make sure that this slides freely without dragging that key stock. So it is dragging it a little bit. So I'm just going to file this down just a bit. Now the key stock stays in place. Now sometimes you may need to cut the corner a little bit on the key stock, and you may even need to do a little bit of filing on the actual coupler inside, especially where the screw comes through. Sometimes it's off to the side of the sidewall, and you'll need to file this just a little bit. Now that that's good, I'm going to get the anti-seize. I'm going to apply anti-seize on the shaft and in the keyway and on the key stock as well. And we're going to apply some on the coupler, in the keyway of the coupler as well. And what I want to do at this point, I want to just work it back and forth a little bit. Okay, so for the 36-inch pump, the spacing between the bearing and the coupler at this point here, between this face here and this face here, we're looking for 2.5. On the 30-inch pumps, you're looking for 1 7/8. So this is the 36, so we're looking for 2.5, right about there. And I'm gonna push this key stock in, just so it's just past the face here. I don't want it to rub into the other key stock. I'm gonna get my Loctite out. And I'm gonna wanna tighten I don't wanna tighten the key stock set screw first. I wanna tighten that one after. So I've got that there. Once again, I'm gonna go backwards first and then forwards. I'm gonna work this all the way down until it touches and then back it off just a little bit and then double check my measurement. So that's the bottom there. I'm just gonna back it off just a touch, make sure this moves, which it does. Now I'm gonna double check my measurement. Once again, looking for 2.5, right there. I'm gonna lock this down. Wipe off the excess. Okay, double check my key stock is sitting in from this face here of the coupler a little bit. Doesn't have to be much, just a little bit. And the Loctite. Rotate back. Okay, I just hit the bottom. I'm just gonna verify that that key stock isn't coming out past the face, which it is not. Now I'm gonna torque it down. Okay, so now this side bearing and coupler is installed. I'm just gonna clean up all the excess anti-seize here. And I'm gonna rotate this so the key stock is to my left if I'm standing behind by the motor side of the pump here. Now we're ready to put the motor back up. Okay, so I'm just gonna give this motor shaft a little wipe off here. And we have that mark was made by the coupler set screw. We're gonna file that down. No resistance, we're good to go. clean up the motor key stock, file down that mark made by the set screw from the motor coupling. You see after. And what I'm going to do, because in the field you're going to want to do the same thing, you're going to want to flip that down. You're going to want to make sure this key stock slides freely. The other thing you're going to want to make sure is that the coupler does not pull the key stock out. So I'm going to push the coupler all the way back, push the key stock all the way back, and make sure that that coupler does not pull that key stock. You can see that the key stock's still where it was. Get the hélices. Okay, and I'm just going to want to work this back and forth a couple of times here. And then all the way back. And at this point I want to make sure once again that that key stock does not come with the coupler. Or if it does, just a little bit. You don't want it to go all the way. Okay, so that's staying in place where I need it to. That's good. So now I can take the coupler here, the sleeve coupler. Doesn't matter which way you go on. It's got these tooling marks, but it doesn't matter. Got that there like that. Okay, now I can put the bolts back in, and then we can do the motor alignment. So here we are at this point now. We're going to do the motor alignment, right? So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to visually align side to side the two couplers. I'm going to get my ruler out. I'm going to place my ruler on the top. And I'm going to see how much spacing I've got here. So it's pretty good. Sometimes you'll end up with a spacing like this, which at that point you're going to want to put some shims under to build it up so it's a little closer. This one is fairly close. Right, I want to make sure all the tension's off the crane here. So when it's about a 1/16 or so, you can actually push these together. Now I've got that. Now I can go here again. It's fairly close there. Okay, I've got my pry bar, and since I've already got shims here, we'll try these out and see how it lines up. So I've got those in. I want to make sure that these motor bolts are free and centered. I'm going to get my ruler again. Check across the top here. So you see it, everything changed. Now I've got a gap on the other side. So what that's telling me is that the motor, the front is up and the back, or sorry, the front is up and the back is down. So what I need to do is I need to elevate the back to bring it back level. You can see it here. I got a gap on that side there. So I'm gonna lift the back up a little bit, add some more shims. Okay, so you see here, I put equal amount of shims in the back here, and you've got equal amount of shims in the front. This section is loose. This is my soft foot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to correct for soft foot by adding some shims here. What soft foot is that 3 of the legs are sitting flat, and 1 leg is floating up a little bit. This is common. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some shims here to adjust for soft foot. If I have a problem, it's going to be, what I'm going to need to do is remove these shims that I added here and move it to the opposite corner. So this is left rear here. I'm going to add this here. If I still have a problem, I'm going to remove these, put it to right front, and it should solve that issue. Very important. So now my shims are not moving. I'm going to check this one here. This one's good too. This one's good. This one's good. So soft foot is fixed. So now I'll come back here. I'm going to push those together. My ruler on the top and see where we're at. So we've got a little bit of gap. The motor is a little high. I'm going to measure that for you. Got my feeler gauges here. Let's try 10. Okay, it's about 10 thou. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this up, and we'll see if it eliminates that. It may eliminate that 10 thou. If not, then we'll loosen it off and we'll remove maybe 5 thou from all 4 corners. The other thing I'm going to want to do before I do that, is I'm going to want to check my angular. So I may be level, maybe parallel, but I might not be angular. So what I'm looking for is equal distance from here to here, and then 180 degrees down, same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my caliper here, set it so it just touches. I've already squeezed this together a bit. I'm just going to tighten this just so it touches. Right about the top there. I'm going to go down to the bottom and double check. And hopefully I got the same spacing here. Okay, so I've got a little bit of a gap. So what that's telling me is that the motor now is tilted up slightly. So I've got a gap at the bottom. I'm gonna pull 10 thou right now out of the front and see what happens. So right now I've got 50 thou shim there. So I'm gonna pull 10 out of that, put 40 thou in. So I got 40 thou for the front right and 40 thou for the front left. Once again, double check my bolts, make sure they're centered and they go up and down freely. And double check the level across the top here. See where we're at. Okay, so now it's showing that the motor is slightly low. I'm going to double check that on the bottom here. Okay. Okay, so it's about 5 thou low. So I want to check my angular again. Okay, I still have a gap there. So I think what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put the 50s back in the front, and I'm going to add I'm gonna add maybe 10 thou in the back and see where we're at. That is pretty close. Let's check our angular. Okay. I'm going to put another 10 thou in the back. Once again, always checking these bolts, making sure they're free. I see my side to sides out a little bit. So I've got this mallet here. Just going to tap this over, try to line up my side a little better. Okay. Well, take a look at that. Side to side is pretty much bang on right now. Up and down is pretty close. Check the angular again. I think that's it. Okay, so angular, we're good. Going up and down now on the parallel. We've got a small gap here. Let's measure that off. I'm going to want to measure both the top and the bottom. So that's roughly 5 thou. Okay, about 10 thou on the bottom. So we got 10 thou on the bottom, 5 thou on top. So we need to raise the motor, probably go 10 thou, and we'll be on the top, will maybe be above about 5 thou. Now sometimes there's a deviation in these, they're not 100%, so you may need to split the difference. So we're gonna see what happens here. We'll add 10 thou, 4 corners. Every time checking to make sure the bolt's free. I'm going to check my side to side again. Okay, so she moved a little bit. I'm going to knock her back. Okay. Hey, let's check our up and down. So yeah, it's about 5 thou high now. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, double check the angular. Hey, that's still good. Okay, so now we're aligned parallel and angular on the up and down. We got to do the same thing side to side. So we're pretty close side to side because we already checked it with the ruler. So now we'll check the angular and see if we got to adjust anything here. Same process. I'm just going to set it so the calipers are just touching. Then check the other side. Okay, so I got a little bit of gap on this side. So what that's telling me is that the motor is twisted slightly like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap the back end towards me and the front end, I'll try to maintain it in the same position. Side to side parallel, not bad. We'll check the angular again. Okay, Angular is good now. Just double check parallel. Okay, everything's pretty good there. I'm going to tighten up. We'll tighten up the motor mounts. You need 15/16 deep drive socket on the impact gun and a 15/16 wrench. And you're going to want to tighten up preferably from the front one corner and then go to the opposite corner towards the back. Now, whichever one is the soft foot, so we established that the left rear here is the soft foot. I'll go to the front, then I'll do the soft foot, then I'll come back to the other side front and back to the back here. So I'm going to torque this down and then we'll check it. We may need to loosen it off again to make some adjustments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten up a little bit at a time. So I'm going to take this down until it's snug and then move on. There, that's pretty snug, almost. There, so that's snug. Come back to here now, do the same thing. That's snug. Down to the front. Snug. Okay, that's snug. So now I'm going to double check everything. Double check the angular. There we go. Okay, so we're going to tighten this up again. As you're doing this, be careful not to hit the motor. It can throw everything out of whack. Okay, so now that's snug. One more check, make sure nothing moved. That's beautiful. Perfect. So now I'll do final torque. Okay, last but not least, we're going to tighten up the coupler from the motor. I'm going to spin that up. You'll notice here I've got the key stock for the motor here, and I've got the key stock for the pump 90 degrees offset. It's for a balancing. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. One, if you have a clamp that'll go across to hold these together, is you want these to hug each other tight. You don't want an action like this where one is spinning and the other one's kind of loose. You want them snug. When they're snug together, they rotate as one without any of that lag in between. If it's loose, then you'll see I can rotate one and the other independently. We don't want that. So if you got a clamp that'll go in here, that's good. If not, you can get a block of wood, put it here, and a pry bar, and tighten this at the same time. So this is a clamp we got, and I can squeeze it together like that, and it'll hold it all together tight for me on my Loctite. Once again, I'm going to start with the set screw that is not going into the key stock first. We'll do the key stock one after. And torque. Just wipe off the excess. I can rotate to the other side here. And what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to push this key stock in about there. I know that that's not past the end of the coupler. Some of the key stocks on the motor will be longer than the coupler. You're going to want to mark those ones. I'll show you an example of that after. Let me show you what happens when the key stock is longer than the actual coupler here. So you'll see here, this key stock is obviously longer than the coupler. So if I'm putting this coupler on the motor, I don't want to push that key stock in all the way there and have this end of the key stock hit the other key stock from the motor from the pump coupler. So what I want to do is, before I lock it down, or before I even install it, I want to set it up like this so it's just sticking inside a little bit past this face. And if I take a file, one of these quarter rounds, I can actually score a mark on the key stock. And that would be a reference point. So that when I've got the coupler where I want it and I want to push this key stock in place just before setting, I know don't go past that score mark. That way I know for sure it's not going to stick out like this and cause problems down the road. Once again, some Loctite here. Torque. And wipe off. And I can release the clamp now and clean up all the excess anti-seize. At this point I can measure my parallel and angular. I've got feeler gauges and a ruler. Just going to hold it across the top here. I see I've got it on the pump side. I come down to the motor side. I'll see that it's touching there. So now I'm going to come to the motor side, and you can see the motor is a little high. And we're going to measure that to see what it is. So it's 3 thou. I'm going to check the bottom now. Same thing. Sometimes there's some paint. You may want to just scrape it a little bit with your ruler to get a good surface area. So the bottom, you notice it's flush. It's 100%. I can't get anything under here. So the top is out by 3 thou, but the bottom is 100%. This is common. Okay. The other thing you're going to want to do when you're doing this test is if you see these stickers, sometimes the stickers will throw you off. So you're going to want to peel them off if that's where you're measuring from. So the next thing I'll do is I'll check the same top and bottom, but now I'm going to check angular and take a measurement for that. Okay, so that's tight there. Okay. So I got a little bit of a gap on the bottom. So we're going to measure that gap there. So that's 0.002, 2 thou. So we got a 2 thou angular offset on the bottom and a 3 thou parallel offset on the top, which if you refer to the sheet, it's well within the specifications. Okay, so we'll do the same process on the sides. This side here, can't get anything there. Okay, so I've got a 4/1000 of an inch parallel offset there. Now I'm going to go for angular, do the same thing. Okay, I got a 3/1000 of an inch angular offset. Once again, well within specification. At this point, everything here is done.